just thank you very much for coming and well, you didn't have to come anywhere, did you? for presenting this session for us. Like you say, we had over 200 people registered. So yeah, it's something that people are very interested in. So thank you.
Yeah. When we heard that Box was going away, we were very interested in it. So I'm Mel Wolverson, and I work for Extension within web services and communications. And we were a little worried because all of our links to batches of PDFs and newsletters and things like that, they were all in Box, and we're sharing them on the website via a Box link, right? And so we had a panic moment of what do we do? Where do we go from here? And where do we put those files and how do we share them? So a little bit of research later, we have come up with a little bit of a solution. And so I'm here to kind of talk about where do all those files go and how does it work. And I'm also going to give you a little bit of a demo and maybe some tips within Teams and going from there out to the website and just help you guys feel a little bit more comfortable, hopefully, with the transition. That's the idea. For a little background on me, I worked with Web Extension for almost 2 years now. And before that, I was an IT trainer working with IT. So I actually put together a lot of the content and taught a lot of the content for the Box transition when we first went into Box. So I'm kind of familiar with that whole situation and how excited we were when Box came up. But of course, it is a cost savings measure to move to Teams. And so that's where we're going. All right, let me go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop my video because I'm going to be looking at a different screen anyway. All right, hopefully you guys can all see my PowerPoint here. We'll start from there. So Box is going away. What? Yes, it is scheduled for next August. It was actually scheduled prior to that, but people have to have enough time to move files and transition and learn and how that's going to work. And so they moved it to next August. That's the current date. And where will I put my files and stuff? Well, there's 3 different options, and it kind of depends on what the content is in which option you choose. So there are 3 options within the Teams group, if you want to pull it like that. There's OneDrive, there's Teams, and then there's Sharepoint. And you can get to all 3 of those from the Teams app that pretty much everybody has installed on their computer already, or if they haven't, their IT pro is probably going to do it soon. So let's look at what these 3 are. How do they work? So OneDrive, the files are not shared by default. They are your files. So it's kind of like if you had a personal Box account, the files in your personal Box account aren't shared by default. They're just yours, and you have access to them wherever you are in the world. So it is a very nice feature. So it's going to replace your personal Box folder. Also, we're also slowly as a university getting rid of share drives. So if you had a personal folder on a share drive with, let's say it has your name on it and it has your files in it, and maybe you were syncing it with your desktop, it'll probably eventually replace that too. So OneDrive. Teams, by default, all the files within your team and all the conversations and all the chats and all that kind of stuff within your team, they're all shared with all the team members. Everybody has access to those. Now you can have private channels within a team, and those private channels, maybe you have a channel for just a small a training group or a small marketing group within your larger team. You can have a private channel where people can't publicly see that channel unless they're invited, and that works fine. The owner, of course, of the team, or owners, you might have more than one owner of a team, can see those private ones as well and can get to those as well, which they would have to do because if someone went away, they would have to be able to get rid of it and edit it and stuff like that. Teams, you get 5 terabytes of space. That's a huge amount of space. And so you don't have to worry about running out of space for quite some time if you are sharing files within your team. Now, by default, you're not sharing files outside of the university using Teams. Teams with SharePoint, however, allows you a little bit more flexibility and the ability to share those files outside of the team. So a little bit more about how this looks. Again, OneDrive, your files are not shared by default. You can share files with University of Missouri employees, though, if you want to. So I can send a file, I can give access to a single file or a single picture or a single video or possibly even a folder, but I probably wouldn't do that from OneDrive. I would probably just be sending an individual file or item to somebody that I'm collaborating with, to one of my team members, to possibly my manager who needs to review something, right? And I would send it directly to their email and they could then access the file via the online system. Teams. Everybody has access to all the files, to all the stuff. Now, it looks like in this image that everyone is on equal ground, right? But we have owners, we have members, and we have guests. An owner is the person who is in charge of the team. So they can edit files like any member can, but they can also change members. So they can invite a guest. Only an owner can invite a guest. Now, what's a guest? A guest is anyone with a non-university email. Non-university email people who you want to be members of your team must be invited by the owner. Okay, so keep that in mind. They do have that. They also have access to all the channels, including all the private ones and all the content, basically anything in the team. They can access it and change it. A member has access to all the files and all the public channels. So everything that's not locked down by the owner, they can see all chats and they can even invite other members. Guest is very limited because they're a non-university person that we have invited into the team. And so we want to be a little careful about what they have access to. So they can't invite other members. They can't do a lot of things that a member can do even. So they're a little bit more limited, but that's the only options for non-university emails. And I wanted to very quickly show you guys what an invitation to a guest looks like so that you can tell what those outside members are going to get when you send them out. So you're going to see the icon of the team. So that's the little gear icon. You're going to see the name of the team and how many members it has. And then below that, you see the description. This team is open to any MU extension person. That is the description that you put in when you create the team. You can also change that later. And somebody says, when you say Teams, are you referring to Microsoft Teams? Yes, I definitely am. And also, somebody asked about the PowerPoint. Yes, I can share this PowerPoint later. And so then they click on the little link that says Open Microsoft Teams, and that opens it up. They do have to have it installed. So there is a web client. They can use a web version if they can't download anything. But if they do download the Teams app, it works a lot better. As you can see lower down on the picture, there's a Teams app for Windows, Mac, iOS. That's your Apple phones and iPads, as well as Android devices. So you can get a Teams app. It's very versatile on whatever device you want. So this is what the guest invite looks like. Okay, Teams plus SharePoint. This allows all of the same sharing within the team that you would normally have, but it's just taking your team a step further and opening up a SharePoint link, and then you can share with outside groups and the website. Now, this does take an extra step, and so you'll probably have to connect your IT Pro, connect with your IT Pro to make this happen. And if you are an IT Pro and you're like, I don't know what she's talking about, you can contact me and I can get you the right instructions to do so. But basically sharing outside with external people, either on a website or external groups or social media or whatever you need to do, it takes an extra step. You can't do it by default using the way Teams we have set up.
Mel, there's a question about Box was HIPAA certified by the security team, or Team SharePoint and OneDrive also certified as HIPAA compliant by the security team?
If we have an IT person, if Kevin is in the chat, maybe he can throw out that. I am not positive that it is HIPAA compliant. I believe it is secure. I mean, it's as secure as our email is because it's on the same server, it's on the same setup. But that would be your IT pro question. That would definitely be IT pro questions. All right, let's look at how it works. Okay, so I have, here I have Teams, the Teams app. And you can see over on the far left-hand side, we've got activity, chat, your various different teams that you're in, a shared calendar if you want to use that, and on your calendar, and calls, which is a little bit different. I want to, if I have time, I'll cover that because it's a little bit different than just calling somebody, and files, which is also different than you might think. So files is actually OneDrive. So if I click on files, I can see my various recent documents that I have opened via the various different teams that I'm a part of. But if you look down a little bit further, you see cloud storage and you see OneDrive. And if I click on that, that's my OneDrive space. So if people are wondering, how do I get to OneDrive? You can get to it directly from Teams. Now, let's say that you don't want to get through this path every single time. You don't want to go files, OneDrive, blah, 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 to get to your files. Well, if you click open in OneDrive at the top of that page, it takes a second, but it then opens it up on a website. So this is OneDrive online. So it's got all of the same files, all the same folders. It's got access to all my different shared libraries, and everything is accessible right here. And this is actually a little bit easier. So what I recommend doing is when you get to the point where you have some content in there, go ahead and click on that My Files OneDrive. Go ahead and go out to the website. And then in whatever browser you're using, go ahead and bookmark this right here, because this is essentially a page. Now, it might ask you to log in. Next time you come, if you've logged out, it might ask you to log in, but at least you've bookmarked the page and you don't have to go through Teams again. Also, if I go back to Teams, so this is in the app, you'll notice that I have this test folder, and you'll notice that it says shared. And you'll also notice, hopefully, that all of these options up at the top, none of them say share. So how did I do that? If you hover over the folder and you click on the three dots, notice it still doesn't say share. It does say copy link, but that's not quite the same thing. It doesn't give you quite the same options. But if I go out to the website where we just were, so this is exactly the same thing, but it's on the web version. Now I can go to test and notice there's a new icon. There's a little share icon. And the three dots now has a whole bunch more options. So the web version of both OneDrive and Teams, which is the Teams one is essentially SharePoint, has more options that you can go to. So I'll click on the little share icon, and I can type in an email address. I can say specific person, so I can do a specific email address, or I can say anyone with a link on mine. Also, people in the University of Missouri with the link, or people with existing access. Well, on OneDrive, that doesn't It doesn't make as much difference. But for this, I'm going to go ahead and say specific people. Remember, I'm still in OneDrive, so my personal OneDrive. So I'll say specific people. And let's say that it's a manager, so they might need to edit the file. So I'll go ahead and make sure that allow editing is checked. And I'll click apply. And then I'll send it to Kyle. There he is. Right. And so I'll send it to him and I'll maybe put in a message. I always recommend putting in a message because otherwise people are getting an email with a link to a file and they don't know what it's about. They don't know what this is for. They may not have any instructions on how to use it. So I recommend going ahead and putting in an option, the optional message. I'll put that this is for my training class and he can ignore it. Just so he knows it's not important. And I'll go ahead and send. Okay. And then you can see that the link has been sent. And then he'll get an email that says, hey, this person has sent you a link. This is for you only. This is your direct access link. Now, when you send links to people, you might suggest that they keep that email because that's their link back to that file. Without that email, it's a little bit more of a pain for them to get back to that file. It's possible, but it's a little bit more of a pain. A lot of times that email is just easier to keep handy and use later. All right, so that's the OneDrive portion. So let me go back to Teams app and let's talk a little bit about Teams. So Teams is one of the icons. It's the third icon on the far left. And as you can see, I'm in several different teams. Down towards the bottom, you can see that Pearls of Production is in bold, and that just means that there is a message there that I haven't read yet. I have opened this particular team. This is sort of a team I created for testing, so it doesn't have any unsafe content in it. I can share it with you guys. And so I have 3 different channels going on. General is always there by default. You can't get rid of it. And then any others you add. So I have alerts and then I have training. And as you can see, you've got the chat in there and you can also reply. There is no way to collapse conversations easily. So that's kind of a pain, but that's the way it goes there. Now up at the top, you see when I'm in the different sections, right? You see posts, files, and a staff notebook. If I click on files, that shows me all of the different files that are shared with the team. Now, there is a little icon over here at the top that says Open in Sharepoint. Now, before I do that, I want you guys to notice the links up at the top. I can create a new file. I can upload something. I can sync to my computer. I can copy links, but it doesn't give me a lot of sharing options. So if I select an item and I select copy link, you can see that this is very limited sharing. It just gives me a link and that's it. And that link is going to be limited to within university people. It's not going to be external at all. So I'll uncheck that and I'll go ahead and go to Open in Sharepoint, which I actually already have this one open. So I'll just switch over to it. So when you first open it up, it might actually be in the general section. So let me go there. You can see, there we go, documents general. Now you guys might store your things in other folders. So there might not be anything in the general folder, but that's okay. You can always click on the documents right next to general, this breadcrumb here. And that takes you to all of your folders. Right? So here I have some content. If I select an item here, you'll notice now that I have, again, a lot more options. So I have, as well as copy link, I have share, I have download, delete, pin to top. Pin to top is a nice tip. So this works both within the app and within the web client and also for OneDrive, if I remember. So you select it. So I'll select this one down here since it's not. There we go. Since it's not at the top, I'll select it and I'll select pin to top. And now notice it's a much larger icon at the top. So if you have a lot of files in a folder, you can very quickly pin the most important items to the top. And that way people don't have to scroll down or maybe go through multiple different screens to try to get to the one they want. This is kind of like bookmarking, but it only works within a folder. So it's only pinning it to the top of the folder, or it's pinning it to the top of the section. It's not necessarily pinning it to the top of an entire group of folders or anything like that. To unpin it, I just select it, click Edit Pin up here, and unpin. And that takes that down. But again, that's a nice shortcut way to get the files that you need up at the top. Also, I'll go to Share here. Let me select that file again. I'll click Share. Here I have my share options. Now I have anyone with the link, notice this, is grayed out. By default, this is going to be grayed out for Teams, and you're going to need to talk to your IT pro to get that turned back on. And then any links that you share, using that option, anyone with a link, they're going to be public links that anyone in the whole world can get to, and that would be a link that you would put on your website. Now, they don't want all the teams to do this, so they've limited the option because it's a security thing, right? Then you can take that and put it on a website if you want to, if you turn that on. Okay, so for this particular team, I have not turned it on, but you can see all those options. Now down below, we've got actually a couple new options. All of these options were not available previously. So you used to just have allow editing, which you can turn on or off. If you turn off, then they can't do a whole lot. They can view it and they can download it. Now the newer feature is block download. If you block download and turn off allow editing, then all they can do is view the file. This is good for a PDF or a Word document that you want people to be able to see, but you don't necessarily want them to download, change it, and use it. All right. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. So that's a little bit about sharing. I do want you guys to be very careful about what you pick here. If you are sharing with the public, make sure you select anyone with a link. Otherwise, let's say that you accidentally pick people in the university with the link, right? And you share it out and a non-university person gets that, they click on it, they're going to ask for access. Then it's going to go back to the owner of the team. Email is going to go back to the owner of the team that says, hey, so-and-so wants access. Now, let's say that you share that email out with 50 people and none of them actually have access because they're not university people or for whatever reason you didn't choose the right access level, and all 50 of those people ask for access. That means whoever's owner of the team, that could be multiple owners, they all get emails asking for access. 50 of them, possibly, right? So you do want to be very careful about how you do this and how you choose what level of sharing you're doing. Make sure that the level of sharing you're doing matches the people you're sharing with. All right, let's talk about another cool trick that I just love. This is a huge plus for SharePoint and just Teams in general, because you can do this in the Teams app as well. Let's say that I have this Word document and someone has sent me an update. I can open it directly in here. So I just click on it and it opens up the file, and I can click in the file and I can just start typing. This is added content that is very interesting, right? And as you can see down here, web feed, it does have spell check and things like that, just like a normal Word would do. Up at the top, you'll notice that you have a variety of different options. Notice that it is a little bit more limited than regular Word, but here's another tip. Over on the far right-hand side, there is a tiny little down arrow. Can you see that? Switch ribbons. If I click on that, it opens it up to the larger ribbon and gives you more visible options. All those options were there before, but this gives you a little bit more of a visual of all those options available. So if you're used to the regular version of Word, this might be something you prefer. If you prefer the smaller one, maybe you're on a laptop with a smaller screen and you just don't have that space, then you can go ahead and click that little arrow again, and it goes back to the compact version. So pretty cool. Now, saving. There's not really a save place here. It is automatically saving in the background, and it will go ahead and warn you if it's not or if it's not done saving yet. So I'm just going to start typing. I want you guys to notice up here in the top left-hand corner, it says AP style cheat sheet, and then it says saved. That allows me to know that it has been saved. But I want you guys to watch that as I'm typing. Notice it says saving, right? So all that time it's saving, and then as soon as it updates, okay, there it finished saving, says saved, now I'm safe. Now, if I want to exit out of this, it actually opened this in a new tab, so all I have to do is close it. I know it's saved, so I just close it, and the updated version is right here. So unlike Box, where you would download the version, make the changes, and then upload the new version, and hopefully you didn't change the name of the file so that you had version care. But if you did change the name of the file at all, then now you've got two files up there, and which one is the newer version and all that kind of fun stuff. This is a lot easier. You can do the same thing with Excel files. You can do the same thing with PowerPoint files. So any of your base files, your base Microsoft files, you can edit directly in SharePoint or the Teams app, which is pretty sweet. You'll also notice that some of these have little, I don't know, it's like the name of the file is creating a comment. It's like the three little lines in the corner. That just means that that's a new file. That's a new file that was recently added to the group of files because I added some things for this session. Two people can edit a document at the same time, and that's fine. It works kind of like Google Docs, if you guys have ever used that, where two people can be typing in the same document at the same time, and it works just fine. That's what happens. Now, if two people are working on the same document at the same time, let me wait for it to load here. You could add a comment. So you could click on comments and you could add a new comment and you could say, wait, stop. I have edits to make. Please hold on. And then you could leave a comment that way. You could also go back to your Teams app and send that team member a message, right? Using the Teams app, since they're already here anyway, they should get it. You know it's on. And you can just say, hey, hold on, I'm making some changes. Can you wait until I'm done and then make your changes? I'll close that. Someone asked, how do you make a new document? And that was actually the next thing on my list. So you're right here in Tune. So you go up to the new button and it's right there. So you can create a new folder. I'll call this testy test. Click create. And that creates a folder. You can click, hold, and drag things into that folder. So I'll drop a couple of these into testy test. Again, just click, hold, and drag. I'll go back up to new, and I'll go ahead and create an Excel workbook. And as you can see, this looks pretty much like Excel. And you can do all the calculations that you could normally do. So I'll put in 125, 123, 123, 123. And then in D cell, I'll go over to auto sum and I'll do a sum. And notice, just like in Excel, it highlights the three most likely cells. I can click enter and it goes ahead and does the calculations. We can, since that's a total, maybe I want it to have a different highlight color, and you can right click, you can insert rows, delete rows. Most of the normal things that you could do in Excel, you can now do in this file. And notice up at the top in the middle, it says book and then it says saved. So by default, it just calls it book. So if I click on that name where it says book, I'll call this class test, just so I remember it's not something I need to keep. I'll hit enter. It says saving, saved, and now that's the name of the file. So now if I close class test, you can see in the folder, it's right there, class test. And anytime I need to, I can go back, click on it, and it's right there. All my changes are right there. Someone has asked about dragging attachments from Outlook directly into SharePoint. I have not actually tried that. Try it. Let us know if it works. I will say that you can drag and drop from your desktop. So for instance, let me see if I have a file here that I can drag and drop in. There's a banner image. I'll drag and drop. So this is just, I'm dragging and dropping this from my desktop. So hopefully you guys will be able to see it as I'm dragging it in. Notice I've got the blue outline, so I can decide where it's going to go. Is it going to go in documents? Is it going to go in general, which is the folder I'm in? If I hover over testy test, it'll just drop it right in that testy test folder, and I can just drop it here if I want it to go within the general space. So pretty cool. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice, over here on the top right, we have this little refresh icon, the two arrows. And while something is being uploaded or downloaded or whatever, that icon will be spinning. And then once it's done, it'll go away. But I want you guys to notice that the main reason being you can't close the window. You can't close Chrome or whatever browser you're using until that's done spinning, until it's complete. Because if you do, whatever you are trying to upload isn't going to work. Right? And it may take longer than you expect. So let's say that you're uploading a whole folder from the share drive, right? You're uploading 30 files. Well, that's going to take some time. And so it may take a few minutes. It may take several minutes, depending on the files that you're uploading, to get that thing to stop spinning. But don't close the tab. Don't close the browser until you see that stop spinning, or you may have just have to start again, right, with those files that got missed. So do be aware of that. But also in the same space, just a little bit further over, you see a little filter icon. If I click on this, this allows me to filter within a folder for particular files. I thought this was pretty cool. So if I select Excel, it filters down to just Excel files within that folder. If I filter down to PDF, it shows just the PDFs in that folder, which is pretty cool. And it actually keeps a running tally. So these are all the file types that are in this folder. If I had more file types in this folder, it would show more as the different file types, but it's only showing me what's there. And if it doesn't know, it's an other. So other, testy test in this case is a folder, so it doesn't fit into a category. JPEG, there we go. We've got 2 JPEGs in there. And so that makes it a little bit easier to sort within your content and find your content. Also notice we have a slider modified since 2020. Now all of these files are brand new, so the slider is actually pretty doggone short, right? There's not a lot of content here. But you can use this slider to find just today's content, stuff that was updated today, yesterday, last 7 days, and go back and forth and see that content. So that is another just short tip to make your life a little bit easier. All right. Are we over on time?
I'm having a hard time with that mute button. Okay, no, we go until 11:30.
Oh, shoo. Okay, good deal. Well, let me just take a breath then and see what other questions we have. Let's see. Is that filter only looking at files in the general folder? It is just looking at the folder that you are in. So it is focused on the folder you are in, not any subfolders or subfiles. Can you delete a file in Teams? Sure. You can select a file. I'll select this one I just added. And you can just click on it to select it or whatever. You can even right click or click on the three dots. There's a variety of ways to do it. And then select delete. You can also do it up at the top, delete. And you can also do it from within the Teams app, right? I can select the content there and select delete from up at the top as well. Do you have to be an owner to delete the file? I don't believe so. I think any member could delete files, should have access to all files, editability to all files. Yeah, any member should be able to do stuff too. Different subgroups who should not have access to each other's files. This is a tough one, Erin. You can do it a variety of different ways. You could set it up so that they're not a member of the team, but they do have access to that folder. So for instance, let me go back to my SharePoint space here for training. So I created this testy test folder and I dropped some files into it. Let's say I have a group of people who all work at the university, and I don't want them to be a member of my team because I don't want them to have full access. I don't want them to add team members. I don't want them to have essentially full member access. I just want them to access this folder. So what I can do is I can just select the folder. And I actually prefer to click into the folder. This is just my preference, but I prefer to click into the folder. And then over on the far right-hand side, I click on the details pane. That's the little I. So it's right next to the filter. It's a little I here. And then it says has access. And then it has all the people that have access. So I'll select manage access. And then I can give certain people direct access to the folder, almost like they're a member, but it's just this folder. So I will select the plus next to direct access, and I'll go ahead and I'll add in Jolene Pfeffer. Oop. There we go, who I used to work with over in IT. And of course, just like we did before, I'll go ahead and add a message. This is just for class. Feel free to ignore. Okay. I want to make sure notify people is checked because I want them to get an email. I want them to get a message. And I'll go ahead and grant access. Now, she'll have direct access to this folder, but she's not necessarily a member, so she can't see anything but this folder. It's the only thing she has access to. And what she'll see is she'll be able to see the folder. She will actually see the folder structure. So she'll be able to get around the team and see the folder structure, but she won't see any of the files inside of those folders. It'll be like I have a whole bunch of blank folders. So keep that in mind, but that she won't be able to have access to any of those other files. So that's what I would recommend. If you just want to share a folder or a small amount of content, I would put it in a folder and then just share to those people. What is the process for moving files and sharing from Box to Teams? Well, in Box, you download all of your content, and then, unfortunately, in SharePoint, you upload all of your content. Now, if you have a lot of files in Box, this could take some time. You might want to do it one folder at a time, one subfolder at a time. It's up to you how you do it. Because remember, you got to wait for that spinny thing to finish before you close the tab. And you may not want to upload gigabytes of files to do that. So you may do a folder at a time or a subfolder at a time to make it a little bit more palatable. You may also ask your IT pro if that would be something that they would be willing to do, because they'll be part of the team system as well, and so they may be able to help with that. But you know, they may also be overwhelmed and not able to help. I was able to go ahead and do ours on my own. So what you would do, let me see if I'm already logged into Box. I will be in a second. Okay, so I'll go to Nexus. So I have all of these, this is in Box. I have all of these files in Box, all these folders. If I go to this folder, select it, in Box, up in the top right-hand corner, you see download. So you can download that whole folder. So I'll go ahead and select something a little bit smaller. I'll just select this file, right? And I'll select download. So that's going to drop into my download folder. And then I'm going to go to, not OneDrive, my SharePoint space. Okay. And I can either select upload, or if I need to, I can drag and drop files, and that's fine. Now, if somebody mentioned Box Sync, if you already have your entire Box account synced to your desktop, then you don't have to download it. It's already on your desktop, and you can just drag it from your desktop into SharePoint or OneDrive if that's where you're going. So that part, it actually makes it a little bit easier. But a lot of people might have shared space that maybe they have a group Box drive that they're sharing. And so that whole group may have several gigs worth of content that you don't have synced to your laptop because you'd run out of space. And so that becomes a little bit harder. That's where you want to download and then upload to the shared team. But as far as OneDrive, if you've already got your Box files syncing to your desktop, then go to the desktop Box file and just drag them into SharePoint, and that should be fine. Yes. Yes, James has said that some of the question, i.e. migration plans, are questions for your IT pro. I'm here to show you the process that I went through and give you some tips and some starters. And this is the direction that we're going, to show you the direction that we're going and talk about that a little bit. But your IT pro should help you with one, figuring out how you want to move your share drive over to SharePoint or your share drive over to Teams, and your individual, if you have your computers individually syncing to Box, you can actually set up a sync in OneDrive so that OneDrive syncs to your desktop. So essentially, it'll be the same thing as far as it'll still sync automatically, but that's something your IT pro will have to set up on your computer, kind of like they set up the sync for Box. What happens to files left in Box? Someone asked. Well, after August, that is actually an IT question. It is also partially a departmental question. If your department has a shared file space and they really like Box and they want to hold on to it, then we won't necessarily have a site-wide license anymore, but they could still they could still purchase an account with Box. It would just be more expensive, I assume. I don't know how that's going to work. But I suppose it is possible if you needed more time that you could purchase space on Box for a couple months until you got your files off. So that would be an option. But next August is a long ways away. Hopefully, getting this training in this early, everybody has quite a bit of time to make that happen. I believe all campuses will have OneDrive. I think it's connected to your system account. If you have Teams, you have OneDrive. Someone asked if all the different campuses would have it. Now, as far as I know, you can sync. Oh, here we go. So if you're looking at my screen share, you can sync your entire team on SharePoint, but I wouldn't actually recommend syncing your entire team because that could be massive amounts of files. Remember, the team has 4 or 5 terabytes of space to take up and your computer doesn't. So you probably don't want to sync your whole team. But if you want to sync your OneDrive, okay, so now I'm showing you the online version of OneDrive. Notice there is a sync button, right? And you can click on that and you can sync. Okay, so that can be set up. Lots of good questions. Let me show a couple more tips and then I'll just do questions for the rest of the time because we have actually quite a few questions and that's good. I like that. All right, a couple other tips that I wanted to show you guys in Teams because I know some of you guys are in a lot of teams and it might help to know this. So if you go to a team, right? So I have gone to the one I've created. If there is a channel that you find yourself opening up all the time, you're looking at it all the time, maybe you're even in charge of that channel, what you can do is you can click on the 3 little dots next to that channel and you can pin that channel. It then pins it to the top. So you see I have all these pins. Let me collapse and get those out. So you can see I have alerts and training now under pins. So I no longer have to go through all of my teams and maybe look at several teams. Like Extension Communication has several different teams. 9 are even hidden because there's too many to view. So I have simply pinned the ones that I always go to, the ones that I can help with, and then I don't have to search through all of those to make my changes and comments. If you want to unpin one of them, so I'll unpin alerts, go to unpin, right? Click on the 3 little dots next to it, unpin. There we go. Now, another thing you can do, right? You can manage the team from here. You can hide an entire team. You can add a channel or a member. You can leave the team. If you know that you are leaving the university for some reason and you're the owner of a team, please make sure you pass that team off to someone else so that they can change or delete the team or edit the team. Because without having at least 2 owners, right, when one of those owners leaves, it just sits there and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. The members are just kind of stuck. So if you are in a team that's kind of defunct, you can leave the team. You can edit the team. This is my team, so I can edit the team and I can edit various different information about it. So I can give it an avatar. I can select privacy. I can add, edit the team name. Okay. So those 3 little dots next to the team, lots of different options there. Also, if you're wondering, so who's in a team? You can deselect everything. So make sure you don't have anything selected. And then go to, oh shoot, I just forgot where it's at. Oh, here we go. Manage team. Sorry, I got that wrong. So 3 dots, manage team, kind of makes sense. All right, so here we have all of the team members. You can see I added myself as a guest, and Kyle is in here as a member as well. And so I can see all of the different members. I can see what they are. So over on the right-hand side, I can see owner, member, and guest. And any member can see this list as well. So if you're curious about who's the owner of the team you're on, you can actually check it from here. Now, as the owner, I can go ahead and add a member. And I would just type in a name or an email and then add that person. So that's a way to add members to it. If someone has asked to be a member of the team, that's a pending request, and you can do that. You can turn on alerts or training here. So show for me. This is really handy. So let me go back to extension training and communications. Let me go back to that and let me select manage team. Now I'm only managing it for me. I'm not the owner of this particular team. So notice I have fewer options. So let me go back. If you're the owner, notice you have settings, analytics, all that kind of stuff. If you're not the owner, notice you only have channels, analytics, and apps, right? So I'll go to channels. And now there are various different channels within this. There's lots and lots of different channels. We've broken down this into a lot of different content. And so currently, when I look at the list over here on the left, I have these showing. And that is because I have show for me turned on for these different channels. So if I want to not see on the list content creators, I uncheck that box. And now when I go over to this list, content creators is not part of that list. And now it says 10 are hidden. So if you have a group that has just tons and tons of different channels, that's a way to view and sort those channels so that it's a little bit more manageable. So between the pinned options, you pin a channel, and the ability to manage those channels within what you see here, hopefully that'll help you guys get to your content and get to what you need a little bit easier. All right, let me pause and just take some questions. Can you help with set up a planner on a private channel? Shelly, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but if you want to email me, I can probably look into it and see if I can make it work. Step back and define team. So remember, if I switch back here, teams are something that you can create using the Teams app. You may by default be part of certain teams just by virtue of being in a group. So all of extension is within a giant extension group and a giant extension team. So someone has to create the team in the Teams app. So I'll go to the Teams app and let's see. Down at the bottom here, it says join or create a team. I can create a team or I can join a team with a code. Now I can search teams for fun. Okay. Extension, right? It's not finding any results. Now that doesn't mean that team doesn't exist. It just means that they have made their team a private team that isn't visible from everybody. So be aware of that. You will probably have to say, hey, is there a team for that? And then, hey, can you invite me to get into a team? So a team is just a group of people using the Teams app to chat, to share files. One other thing I was going to mention, I mentioned earlier that I was going to, and I forgot about it. One other way that you can group people within teams that's not a team is you can use the calls icon over on the far left-hand side to group people into regular contacts. It works like your contacts list in Outlook. So you can group people that way. You just add a new group over in the top right and then add people to that group by clicking on the little dots and saying add a contact to this group. Okay. Let me go back to Teams. Okay, so again, you go to the Teams app, you go to Teams, you'll see all the teams that you're in, but then you can also create or join a team. They are trying to limit how many teams exist because it can become kind of crazy to manage. So if you aren't sure there's a team, ask around and see if there's already a team that you just need to be added to. Someone asked you, do you recommend we move to the web version of Teams or OneDrive? If the files, let me go back to that PowerPoint here. If the files are shared with a group of people on a regular basis, meaning you are always using those files, but so is everybody else. Those are files that everybody needs easy access to. You don't want them to go look for them, just really super easy access. You want a team. If the file is your file, you're really the only one that works on it, but maybe you just need approval for that file occasionally, or maybe you just need to share it with somebody because they need to use it in your team, but it's not a file that you normally share out with everybody and people don't normally edit it, it's just you, then that's OneDrive. That's the biggest thing. OneDrive is more you, Teams is more your team. Now, who might fit into a team? Well, if I go back to the website here, Extension Strategic Communications, right? That's the entire communications team within Extension. So there's probably, I don't know, 20 of us maybe in that team. But then there's also direct reports team. So a manager has various different people that they report to. They want an easy way to communicate and share files with everyone that reports under them. So they create a team. They're the owner. Maybe they have another helper who is another owner. And then everyone in their group, everyone under that reporting system has one basically file share. So if currently you have a shared box account or you have a space on a shared drive that your entire team shares, that makes sense to go into Teams. That makes sense to create a team and share those files that way. A team member can access all of the information in all the channels. No, a team member can access the information in all of the public channels. But if there are private channels that they have not been invited to, then they cannot see those. So a member can see all of the channels public and the ones they've been invited to. The owner can see all channels, public and private. And that's the difference. So you could have private channels within a group. So if I open this up here, let me go to Teams. I can create a channel. So I'll add a channel here underneath my test group. And I will call it private. So you can see what it looks like. And so when I create that channel, under privacy, notice it says standard, accessible to everyone on the team, but I can choose private. And then only the people who are invited to that team will have access. So that's another way to subsection off your channels within your team. Okay. IT is limiting teams, not channels, as far as I know. Yes, Riata confirmed that for me. Someone is asking, we are managing multiple committees. Will each committee have their own team, or should all the committee's documents go into OneDrive instead of Teams? I would probably create a team that your group is going to manage. I would then create private channels within that team, and then invite the committee members to those private channels so that they each have their own channel, and then only the owners will be able to have access to all committees, if that makes sense for your privacy issues. It's possible that you could have each committee have its own team. Kind of depends on how big the committee is, how many files they're going to be sharing, whether they just need a simple chat. If it's fairly simple, then I would probably go with one team with various different private channels. If it needs to be kept secret, if each committee chat needs to be kept separate and not necessarily a lot of crossover, I would do it that way. When you migrate from Box, do folder permissions transfer? No, sadly. When you transfer from Box to SharePoint, you have to add everybody again, unfortunately. So don't delete the one on Box until you have added all the permissions on SharePoint, because you won't necessarily remember, or I personally won't remember how many people had access. All right, it looks like we are low on time. Susan, do you need to add anything here?
Nope, I will send out an evaluation probably today or tomorrow for the class. And you mentioned something about making the files available. So do you want to send those to me and I can send them?
Sure. I'll make those available. I've actually got the PowerPoint that I showed at the beginning of the session, but I've also got sort of a starter instruction guide that I can also share that's a PDF, and hopefully those two will get people going a little bit.
Perfect. That sounds great. You're right, though. We ran right up to and over our time. So thank you very much for sharing. Obviously, this is something that is of great concern to a lot of people. So
sure.
Thanks. We'll go on and sign off for now. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. If you need me, I'm at wolversonm@missouri.edu.
Thanks, Mel.